one of my clients has a son he just turned 20 years old. And I think he went to college for a year and decided, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not getting enough out of it. So he said, I'm gonna pause college, and I really like marketing. So he started working on, he's getting his Google certification for Google marketing stuff. And my client said, hey, would you mind grabbing a cup of coffee with my son, or he'd like to pick your brain. And I said, absolutely, I'd be thrilled to, right? Because like I said, I love seeing people putting themselves out there. I love seeing people betting on themselves. And if somebody is young, and this is advice that I gave him, and I would tell anyone, if you are, college age, and if you're going to school for something, if you're not 100% sure what you're going to college for, if you're not going to school to become a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, where you've got to have that degree, I would highly consider an alternate route. Because I can tell you, as someone who works, in marketing, I'm in the process of hiring more people right now, and I don't care at all about a degree. There are great professors out there, and I don't doubt that at all. But my experience has been, more often than not, if you are teaching in a classroom, you are not in the field. You are not turning a profit. You are not answering to a client who is demanding, you know what, I've got to justify spending money on you. And that is a totally different world. And that's something that college professors, quite frankly, they've never had to do it. So if you're looking at getting into something, especially like marketing, I would try to find a way. And I told this guy, I said, I would pick one or two skills, and he already had done like some of the stuff. He's doing such a great job before I even talked to him, because he's getting his Google certification done, and he's really into photography. So he's focusing on photography, and he is, he's gonna, I said, set some time limits for yourself, give yourself another 6 or 8 weeks, and then go out and find your first client and use that photography skill set that you've got, as good as you are, wherever you are at that point. Go out and find somebody to pay you $10 an hour. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but go out and get real world experience, because that's something that you can't replicate anywhere else. You can't just sit there and say, oh yeah, like making something up or practicing is not the same as playing a game when it comes to marketing stuff. So if you can find somebody that actually owns a business or needs help, and most people do need help with social media, with content creation, with all of it. And if you have a skill that you can go in and offer and make it beneficial to them, I think you're going to be very surprised and pleased to how open people will be to hiring you. And if you're a company and you're nervous about, bringing somebody in or hiring a social media team, this is a great way to dip your toes in the water. And I often say, I would say beware of, your hiring your nephew as an intern to run the social media for your $20 million company, for your small and medium-sized business. That being said, if you find the right person, then it's a great thing all the way around. It's great experience for that person, for them to learn what it's like to really be a social media manager, what it's like to really be a content creator, how to, get in there, figure out what's working. And it can be really strong for them if they're the right person. The problem is if it's somebody that just wants to come in and be on cruise control and kind of punch in and punch out and just do whatever you tell them to do, and they're not a self-starter, then I feel like you're going to end up losing that side of the battle. So like everything else, it's shades of gray, right? There's not a set fix. Like you definitely shouldn't hire somebody that is young and doesn't have any experience, or you definitely should hire that person. It's like, no, if that's the right person, if they come in with a good attitude and they work hard and they're problem solvers, then you're going to win. But if they come in looking for, if they're entitled and lazy, you're going to lose. So you got to take those chances and you got to figure things out. And so I was kind of telling him like, okay, I would work on, you've got your Google certification coming, you've got your photography. Those are two great skills. Just those two things alone are marketable. So you find a client, you push that. And the other thing that I told him was, getting your time management figured out, because when you work for yourself, you can lose a day like that, like in 5 seconds. It's so easy to waste time. So one of the things that I've done over the last 6 years, especially as I've been self-employed, was really focusing on time management, tracking my time, seeing where I'm spending my time, what's the most effective use of my time. Every single thing that I do that can be sped up, things that aren't creative, I want to, if there's a system or a process involved, I'm constantly optimizing that system or process so that I can spend less time doing tasks that are, quite frankly, mundane. They're blocking and tackling, and they're important. But if I can really drill down on the systems and processes, number one, it helps me because I get more stuff done in less amount of time. And I also have a system for things. The other side of that is if I build a system properly and I build it well enough, then it makes it easy for me to hand that task off to someone down the road, which is where I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of that right now, which is like, okay, I instinctively had systems and processes that I did for every single task that I do. Well, okay, let's write those down and let's really follow those. Let's tidy everything up so that I could hand it off to somebody else. And if they had instructions, they could follow the way through it. So, I would say anybody that's looking to get started in this field, go out there and find 1 or 2 skills that are marketable, get your time management buttoned up. And the other thing that I talked to him about, and this is something where, I don't read 50 books a year. I probably should. I know that a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know there's a lot of studies that say people that read more books, there's a certain number, like the most successful people in the world read X amount of books per year. I don't read a ton of books, but the books that I read that I love, I try to live by as much as possible. And there's a handful of those out there. Traction is one of them by Gino Wickham, I think his name is. Mindset, I think by Carol Dweck, I think is her name. But the other book that I don't push it on people, but if people ask me for things, the other book that I cannot recommend enough, and I'm going to share my screen here, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I bring that up, and I brought it up when I was talking to this young man, because I said, in order for you to succeed, you're going to need to get momentum. And getting momentum is hard when you're getting started. This also goes back to you starting creating content. If you're brand new to creating content, it is really, it can be really challenging to keep going. So a lot of times there's a quote from this book where it basically, I'm going to butcher it if I try to get it exactly right, but the idea of it is you succeed based on, you fall back on your systems and processes. So it's not about setting a big goal. It's about creating little systems and processes. The idea is you don't want to go out and become, you don't want to run a marathon to lose weight. You want to become a runner, and you want to do things that runners do. And that means that you start small. But what I've found in life is if you can pick one thing, if you really want to get, if you've got a list of things, like you want to get better, you want to get your finances in order, you want to get in better physical shape, you want to succeed more in your business, whatever this is, like those are all huge, huge things. And they're all things that a lot of people, I know myself, I could always improve on, right? But one of the best ways to get moving on one of those things is to take one item and break it down to something you can do every day. And then you just build and build and build on top of that. So instead of saying, well, I've got to work out and, like the 75 hard thing, 75 hard is a great, I don't even know, a sprint. It's a 75-day challenge where you drink a gallon of water, you work out twice a day. One of the times has to be outside. And then what else? You have to read, I think 10 pages of like a nonfiction book. You have to take a picture of yourself, like a progress picture for your physical and for your physical improvement. And then you also have to stick to a diet. Those are all like really great things. But if you're struggling and if you're like in the pit right now, then if you started with one of those things, if you started by saying, you know what, I'm going to get my steps. I'm going to pick a number, and I'm either going to say, I'm either going to hit 10,000 steps a day, or I'm going to improve. I'm going to improve by 500 steps every week until I get to that 10,000 steps a day. And then I'm going to tack the water onto it. Then I'm going to tack the strength training onto it. And what does this have to do with, business, marketing, content creation, etc.? Well, the answer is everything. It has everything to do with that, because you can take the exact same principle that is outlined in Atomic Habits. And this book it's such an easy read. And it's one of those things when you read it, you're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Like everybody should be doing this. No doubt about it. Like everybody should be, anybody that wants to succeed or wants to get better, they should start doing this. But, for me at least, I never had thought about it in the way that James Clear laid it out in that book. And so when I was talking to this young man last week, I said, yeah, I said, have you ever heard of the book called Atomic Habits? And he's like, yeah, my dad has told me to read it like 5 times. And so I started laughing. I said, well, we're getting ready to leave. I said, this is the thing. Go tell your dad that, we went and grabbed a cup of coffee and we talked about marketing. And even though you've told me to read this book a half a dozen times, this random stranger I met told me to read it once, and I'm going to read it now. I think it's hilarious, but we all do that. It drives my wife crazy because she'll tell me things that, tell me things to do. And then I'll come home and a friend will have told me the same thing. I'm like, hey, this is a really good idea. And she'll just roll her eyes. She's like, yeah, I told you that 6 months ago or a week ago or whatever. You know what I mean? But my point is, no matter where you are in life, if you're trying to get to the next level, be it with your content, be it with your business, be it with your finances, your personal, whatever, read Atomic Habits and start to implement that every day and follow those rules. And again, like I said, just let the momentum happen, because it will. Once you start doing one thing, once you start holding yourself accountable to one action, then the next action gets a little bit easier. And when it comes to creating content, that is the whole game, is getting momentum and getting to the point where, you know what? It's just what I do. I write a blog post every week. I create a podcast every week. I do a podcast every other week. I shoot a TikTok video every day. You get to that point by starting small and being reasonable and fighting through the suck, fighting through the hard parts, and keeping your head down and saying, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to win. And for me, when I look back on it, I can track every single thing that I have achieved in my life back to the fact that I taught myself how to play guitar when I was 17 years old. Because I sat down and I was talking about this with my wife yesterday, because she was listing out, like, she's like, had this thing. She's like, oh, talents and skills. I have to find talents and skills. And I brought up playing guitar. And I hate the fact that people call guitar playing or any kind of musical instrument a talent. Because I'm like, it's not a talent. It's a skill. And playing guitar is, anybody can do it. Like, there are some people that the ceiling is a lot higher, right? For a John Mayer, for Jimi Hendrix, for Eric Clapton, for Derek Trucks. Like, the ceiling's a lot higher for those guys than it is for the average person. But anyone can learn to play guitar. And what happened for me was, when I was 17 and I had strep throat over Christmas break and I had a tablature book and I wanted to learn how to play Stairway to Heaven. I know it's cliche, but I sat down and I sucked. And I played the first three notes, and it took me 2 weeks. And then the second 3 notes, it took me a week and a half. And then the third 3 notes, it took me a week. And then it just gradually got better and better and better. And God bless my roommates in college, because that was my senior year of high school. My freshman year of college, same thing. I could play the first 12 seconds of every song on the radio, and that was it. But my point is, I figured out how to climb that mountain to where I got to the point where, I was a good guitar player. I wasn't the best in the world, but I figured it out on my own, and that made the next thing easier to learn. Oh, I could play harmonica. Well, I figured out how to play guitar. Why can't I figure this out? And that in your mind, like, that will trigger something in your mind. Like, oh, I've started writing a blog. I didn't know what I was doing when I started writing this blog. 6 months into it, you got a system, and every Monday morning you wake up and you write a blog. So then the next year, you're like, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. I've never done a podcast before. Last year, I'd never done a blog before. I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to figure out the audio side of it. I'm going to figure out how to record stuff. Like, so just stack those skills on top of each other, and just, you will be shocked at what happens when you start to get momentum. I mean, it's the best feeling in the world. It's the absolute best feeling in the world.